Senator Lindsey Graham thinks that he needs an AR-15 to defend his house against the marauding hordes made up of his own constituents. Take a look.
I own an AR-15. If there's a natural disaster in South Carolina where the cops can't protect my neighborhood, my house will be the last one that the gang will come to because I can defend myself.
All right. Hey, that's bleak. Just a little bit. So now he's saying that in the case of a natural disaster, instead of helping his neighbors, like digging them out and being a leader, he would be instead sitting in his bunker, clutching his AR-15 rifle. Wonderful. As if, of course, in the case of a post-apocalyptic hellscape, that you wouldn't just have military-grade weapons lying around. So why would you need your shitty AR-15? We couldn't compete with like an M20 or M60. You know what I mean? But hey, have at it, Lindsey. Sure. All right. And by the way, the AK-47 would likely be even more effective because, those are good battle rifles. I'm just saying, like, they're resistant to jamming and dirt and all this stuff. So it'd probably be a superior weapon if you're locked in a hellscape. But hey, whatever. All right, that's just me. And by the way, this does kind of make me wonder what kind of dystopian hellscape South Carolina really is. Or more importantly, this is what Lindsey Graham actually thinks of you. And here's the thing. While I'm pretty sure there's some instances of crime during natural disasters. Some people take opportunity. And understand, too, that I think most of that crime is actually people trying to survive. And let's go back to for example, the hurricanes, right? So that happened. Some of the hurricanes, or some of the headlines coming out of hurricanes, and it really does show the disparity between white and black people, by the way. White people scrounging for supplies, raiding stores and things like that. Well, they're just acquiring supplies. Black people do the same thing. They're looting. When in reality, of course, they're trying to survive during a time of course, crisis. You're trying to make sure that you can feed your family and have supplies and things like that. When, society kind of breaks down. That's a good racist double standard right there. All right. So, all right. That said, mostly people just band together to dig each other out, to repair and just basically try to survive. But not in Lindsey Graham's world. No. Lindsey Graham is incredibly scared. It's ironic because the guy thinks he's a tough guy when in reality, this entire thing shows how pathetic and weak he actually is. And also, by the way, you need an AR-15 to defend your home. No, you don't. Not necessarily. It turns out that when you ask gun experts about the effectiveness of certain weapons, you get a bunch of different opinions on this, actually. There's no real consensus here. Experts are divided, but they basically say that, there are different weapons that are pretty effective. Pistols, for example, it's an excellent home defense, they say, because it's often the most readily available, easy to handle, but does require some training to use effectively. Shotguns have always had a reputation for being the classic home defense weapon due to stopping power and sound that can scare and intimidate would-be burglars. According to these experts, however, like many experts point out, a shotgun may be too difficult to use for smaller framed individuals and can become a liability, which again, of course, that they would recommend pistols for that. Lastly, they say that rifles would make a great home defense weapon due to increased accuracy, particularly at longer ranges, and the larger magazine capacity is a benefit. One of the downsides, however, is that it may be more difficult to wield within the confines of a small house or apartment, and that would, of course, be good for a shotgun. And so, basically, you're able to utilize pistols, shotguns, or rifles. It doesn't have to be an AR-15 for home defense. And really, the most important thing about that is it's got to be used in the right hands. So you make sure you have to be, train with it. You have to make sure that you know how to use it, that you're safe, and all that stuff. And even if you do all that, studies have shown that you're much more likely to kill yourself or a family member than a would-be burglar anyway. And that's just cold, hard facts. And as long as you know that, as long as you understand that that could be the case, that you might end up accidentally gunning down your grandma or your whatever, and you still want to have a gun in your house for home defense, okay, well, it's freedom. It's called freedom. It's America. But anyway, add to the problems with the AR-15. Well, you've got the 5.56 millimeter ammo. It ends up being actually pretty expensive to not only buy one of them, over $1,000, but also to make sure that you have a stockpile of ammunition. So it's kind of like it's kind of bougie when you think about it. You know, having an AR-15 is like the Cadillac, except it's like a ripoff Cadillac because it's not even that, that great of a rifle versus something else that would be actually pretty effective and cheap to use its own defense. So I'm just saying. All right. Anyway, nonetheless, you got people out here that are buying these AR-15s. They're much more popular than they were before because, of course, I think great marketing campaigns by, ironically, the Obama administration by wanting to, of course, ban them. That's like the biggest advertising for these weapons, because then it scares people into, buying these guns, which aren't really that much more effective. I mean, they can be modded to be incredibly effective. That's why you had the bump stocks and things like that in the high capacity magazines. But generally, we should probably, get rid of some of those things. And the vast majority of the American people actually agree with this stuff. But again, a lot of people choose this because of the cool factor, right? And ironically, as I said before, the attempts to try to limit the sales of this and how much is talked about in the media and good marketing campaigns by the gun manufacturers. That's why it's popular. And so now, of course, it's popular. Lindsey Graham has to jump into it. And of course, he's going to get wrecked on Twitter. Here's what one person says. I lived through a natural disaster in South Carolina. It was called Hurricane Hugo. For 10 days, there was no electricity, running water, or cops. So now, of course, there's got to be the roving gangs, right? How did you survive? Oh, it turns out there was no marauding gangs. Weird. In fact, he says that only neighbors helping neighbors. The problem isn't disasters or gangs. The problem is you, Lindsey. Good stuff. There's more. Another person says, just to be clear, when Senator Graham imagines a natural disaster, he fantasizes about slaughtering desperate people instead of imagining himself acting as a leader to secure the health and safety of his constituents. And of course, as if, it's funny. Lindsey Graham is so incredibly scared and just not like, this is what he thinks leadership is. Cowering in his bunker at his house, imagining the roving gangs of people. It's really, it says so much about the extreme right-wing view. And I think most conservatives, I would wager, most Republican voters, I would wager, would end up helping the community and would not be Lindsey Graham. And would not be a complete cowardly little bitch hiding in his bunker, clutching his rifle and wishing for daddy. No, it's the extremists. But unfortunately, the extremists have taken over the Republican Party. Again, you can go to banning high-capacity magazines, for example, doing those common-sense gun regulations. You're going to find you have massive bipartisan support. And why doesn't that translate into action when it comes to Congress? Well, it's because Congress, the Republicans in Congress, are bought off by the gun manufacturers, of course. And not only that, but you have these crazies, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, that are driving these massive divisions based on the culture war issues, of which guns have become one of them. A couple more here. One says, I didn't realize Graham is so afraid of his own constituents that he feels the need to own an assault rifle in order to potentially protect himself from them. Again, that's a clear example of what Lindsey Graham cares about himself. It's all about him. Another person says, I've been in South Carolina during natural disasters, and the closest thing to a marauding gang I've seen were groups of Baptists handing out bottled water. Please don't shoot them, Lindsey. True. Another person says, here's a U.S. senator responsible for improving and protecting his state, imagining his town turning into a post-apocalyptic wasteland overnight and recommending the policy based on fear instead of, policy to actually prevent it. Welcome to the Republican Party. Or I should say, meet the Republican Party. Look, that's what they are. Understand that they would drive us towards that Mad Max type of future through, for example, not doing anything about climate change, not doing anything about global collapse, not doing anything about, dystopian conditions. It's almost as if the rich people who control the Republican Party, who give donations to the Republican Party, would rather build themselves an Elysium type of space station or go to Mars than deal with the problems here, than to actually help people here. Well, let's just live above the rabble. Or if we have to live down there, we're going to make sure to arm ourselves. And again, that's what the modern Republican Party is all about now. It's about fear, because fear sells guns. Fear sells guns and gets people to vote Republican. Fear and uncertainty has been shown to make people more conservative. Okay. If you're afraid of a group like immigrants, for example, and you're, insecure about yourself, you're afraid, then, if you think they're criminals, you think they're going to take your job, of course you're going to vote for Republicans. Fear. It really is reactionary. It shows that they're a reactionary party. Or what if you think trans people are bad and they add to the moral decay? Well, you're going to vote for Republicans, right? They're completely reactionary, as I said. They're based solely on the feelings. Those feelings, unfortunately, are rage and fear. And those things, of course, are exemplified by Lindsey Graham. Whereas, of course, the progressives, we tend to be, yes, we also have feelings, turns out. We also have the facts on our side. But our feelings are more of like, hey, we want to help people. We want to make the world a better place because we give a shit. And we actually love humanity. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.